Hello and welcome. We are back after the summer. This is the 5th episode of the PM Radio, Westminster. We are happy to be back with new topics and exciting guests. This broadcast is titled Navigating the Unknown, and it's a series of episodes. Each will cover a topic that can help project managers navigate through uncertainty and complexity. Today's episode is on the power of leadership, and we are delighted to host Susanne Madsen, a coach and a trainer in project leadership, to discuss with her how we as project managers can become better leaders. But first, and as usual, we aim to bring you the latest news in the area of project management. And the way we collect this news is by looking at the talk of the hour, by looking at major professional bodies such as APM and PMI, what they are offering, what kind of events they have. And we also try to track how major projects are doing and how they are progressing. We tend to focus mainly on the UK, but we also bring the news on projects from all over the world. So our first bit today for this broadcast is some news. The first news item is on universities. Universities have gone online. Most universities in England, and specifically in London, have started the academic year by welcoming new students online. In response to COVID-19, 90% of universities who responded to a survey run by the student crowd confirmed they will be delivering courses in a blended way for the academic year 2021. Interestingly, an article by The Guardian says, "We should not go back to lectures. Why future students will learn online." In the early medieval universities of Europe, masters stood at the front of the hall, reading excerpts from texts and commenting on them, while students copied down notes word for word. If that sounds familiar, it's because it is. Today's universities bear remarkable similarities to their antecedents, an article on The Guardian argues. This deeply culturally ingrained model has been shaken up by the coronavirus pandemic, which has prevented students from entering lecture theatres in the UK since late March. Universities have been forced to shift online, and while lots of students are unhappy with the speed and quality of the changes, many experts believe that online learning is key to the future of higher education. That was ever a great idea for one person to stand in a lecture hall and transmit 200 to 300 people and expect them to receive and accept that information in one go, was clearly ridiculous, says Ian Dunn, the Coventry University provost, who spearheaded the university's new online-only degrees. "I've already said to my university that we should not go back to lectures." Although universities have slowly been moving aspects of their curriculum online for years, Dunn thinks they have fallen behind on where their students want them to be, and that the coronavirus crisis has granted them a valuable opportunity to catch up. His comments came in answer to the question of whether universities will shift online for good, which was the subject of an online panel hosted by The Guardian and supported by Adobe. Fellow panelist Alison Littlejohn, a professor of learning technology at University College London, cautioned that it's important to distinguish between distance and online learning. Distance learning, such as what is offered by the online university, is likely to always remain a niche, since students value the social and cultural opportunities that campuses offer. Online can be what we call blended learning, where sometimes you learn using technologies that other times you might actually meet face-to-face, she said. The latter is what universities are promising students who enroll this September. This will likely include a mix of videos and readings that students can do in their own time, complemented by socially distanced small group discussions on campus. What might be an offer could potentially be better, said Littlejohn. Though she warned against universities trying to simply replicate the classroom online, it's what students do with concepts and ideas that's most important. This setup could also potentially benefit disadvantaged students who may struggle to afford to live near campus for 3 years, as well as matured students thinking of returning to university to learn additional skills that will help them succeed in their careers, noted Mark Andrews, pedagogical evangelist at Adobe. Another challenge that universities are facing, especially in the context of the rapid shift happening as a result of coronavirus, is the pressure on teaching staff. It's a very different way of working compared to producing lectures and going in and talking to students. It has required a huge effort from colleagues, Littlejohn at UCL said. Littlejohn also added that students are also feeling new kinds of pressure. She urged students starting online courses to consider their mental health needs, including how much time they want to spend face-to-face. This is a responsibility for these universities too, she said, since despite the benefits of learning online, it is still essential that they find creative ways to help students to get to know people on a human level. On the project management front now, the Association for Project Management, APM, has scheduled 2 celebratory virtual events. The Festival of Education and Research 2020 to take place on the 21st of October. The event is set to showcase some of the best and brightest new talent among career starters, education and research. The other event is the APM Project Management Awards 2020, scheduled on 16th of November. The event is sponsored by RPC UK Ltd, promises once again to recognize the best individuals, projects, and programs the profession has to offer. You can see the finalists for awards on the APM website under events. Both events are free to attend virtually, but you have to register. Responsibility and sustainability are indeed becoming hot topics in nearly all discussions on current and future projects. PM Today has wrote an article saying Airbus unveils concepts for the world's first zero-emission commercial aircraft. 3 concepts for the world's first zero-emission commercial aircraft has been unveiled by Airbus. The European plane maker claimed the hydrogen-fueled aircraft could enter service by 2035. So still a long time to go. The designs represent 3 different approaches to how technology and aerodynamics could lead to zero-emission commercial flights. Airbus chief executive said, "This is a historic moment for the commercial aviation sector as a whole, and we intend to play a leading role in the most important transition this industry has ever seen. The concepts we unveil today offer the world a glimpse of our ambition to drive a bold vision for the future of zero-emission flight. I strongly believe that the use of hydrogen, both in synthetic fuels and as a primary power source for commercial aircraft, has the potential to significantly reduce aviation's climate impact." Airbus claimed its turbofan design could carry up to 200 passengers, more than 2,000 miles, while a turboprop concept would have a 50% lower capacity and range. The most distinctive design is named the blended wing body plane, which has the wings merging with the main body of the aircraft, as seen in the picture. All 3 planes would be powered by modified gas turbine engines that burn liquid hydrogen as fuel, and through hydrogen fuel cells to create electrical power. This would create a highly efficient hybrid electric propulsion system, according to Airbus. Major investment in refueling infrastructure at airports would be required for commercial hydrogen-powered planes to be available. So we need more projects and more investment to accommodate this new technology. Rolls-Royce is electrifying. An article from the Times reads that Rolls-Royce is converting their cars, some of their cars, into electric cars. Now, who is not in love with this beautiful car? So if the only thing that has been stopping you from buying a Rolls Royce is that they are not environmentally friendly, then you have got no more excuses. Lunas, the British company, is behind the conversion from gas to electricity. They are adding 30 of their limousines to its line of electrified classic cars, which includes Jaguars and Bentleys. Its vintage collectibles are turned into battery-powered machines for everyday use. The company was born as concern over air pollution grew, and wealthy owners became reluctant to be seen in a gas guzzler. After years of development, the electric Phantom rolled silently out of its hangar. It's almost certainly quieter than any Rolls that has gone before. The piece did not last for long. Soon the Beatles' Drive My Car was playing as this privileged Times reporter, the first passenger in this environmentally friendly Phantom, was chauffeured along the lanes of Northamptonshire. With 38 miles on the clock, the Rolls could have run for another 300 or 5.5 hours on one charge of its 120 kilowatt battery. Its capacity is enough to drive from London to Newcastle, or according to Lunas, complete 20 chauffeured runs from Heathrow to the Ritz. David Lawrence, the company founder, said, "Through electrification, we proudly further the legacy of the best car in the world, making Rolls-Royce ownership a relevant choice for a new generation. Prices start at $350,000 for a Silver Cloud and $500,000 for a Phantom. So if you are ready, it's in the market." Now, back to reality. On COVID-19, new measures have been announced by the Prime Minister Boris Johnson to fight a COVID-19 second wave. Boris Johnson has told people in England to once again work from home if they can, in order to help curb the spread of coronavirus. Johnson said people should be prepared for these restrictions to remain in place for up to 6 months. Here are some of the key points from the announcement. Pubs, bars, restaurants, and other hospitality businesses must operate table service only, and from Thursday, today, must close every evening at 10 p.m. So, no going out today after 10 p.m. Retail workers and taxi passengers must wear face coverings. Face coverings must also be worn by staff and customers in indoor hospitality businesses, except when they are seated at a table. From Monday, weddings will be limited to 15 attendees. Fines for breaking the rules will increase. You can refer to the full list of measures on BBC. So what are we doing to fight this virus? One of the projects is the contact tracing app. The contact tracing app is finally here. It was piloted in May, but ditched in June. NHS COVID-19 app launched today, actually, in England and Wales. According to earlier news in August, the government's initial plans to develop a centralized contact tracing app, announced on 5th of May, were abandoned in mid-June owing to compatibility issues with Android and Apple devices. The government has been working with Apple and Google on an alternative design that it has warned may not be available until the winter. But here we go. It's available from today. It follows in the footsteps of Scotland and Northern Ireland's own effort, but has more features. Apple and Google's automated contact tracing technology will be used to tell people to self-isolate if their phone detects they were near someone later determined to have the virus. But there is more, including a venue check in barcode scanner, a postcode-based risk level checker, symptoms reporter tool, the means to order a coronavirus test and receive its results, a countdown timer to keep track of how long to stay in self-isolation, a guide to the latest advice on local restrictions, financial support, and other related information. So, while contact tracing may seem like the headline feature, health chiefs say the primary goal is to change people's behavior, to make them less likely to catch or transmit the virus. The app is available for smartphones only, not tablets, smartwatches, or other devices. To get started, go to Android's Google Play or the Apple App Store and search for NHS COVID-19 if you are interested. The notification from the app will tell the recipient to go into self-isolation for a fortnight and trigger the start of the app's countdown clock, but the recipient is not told who triggered the alert, and the authorities cannot identify either party, although they can track how many people have been told to self-isolate. Even if the recipient has no symptoms or a subsequent negative test result, they must stay at home for the duration. From 28th of September, people in England can be fined up to 1,000 or even more, not up to, 1,000 or more for breaching self-isolation rules. But because the app lets users remain anonymous and health chiefs want it to be popular, fines for users should not be an issue. Unlike when a human contact tracer orders someone to self-isolate, the app keeps the subject's identity a secret. The app project is one of multiple critical projects that have been taking place and being managed by a variety of stakeholders under unprecedented circumstances, characterized by uncertainty and complexity. As project managers, we all know that we now need to think, react, and behave differently to successfully manage and lead current and future projects. Therefore, and on the topic of leadership, we are delighted to host Susanne Madsen today to discuss leadership skills project managers of today need to master. So, without further ado, I would like to welcome Susanne to join me in the studio. And we are delighted to have you today, Susanne. Hello, how are you?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm very well. How are you?
I'm well as well. Thank you very much for joining us today. Susanne, could you start by introducing yourself to everybody, to the audience?
Absolutely. So I'm Susanne. I am a leadership coach and a trainer, facilitator. I live in London. I'm Danish. I've lived in London for the last 20 years. Almost exactly. I think it's 20 and a half years, actually. And I have been managing projects for the last over 20 years, let's just say, since before I moved here. Yeah, and I teach in a variety of sectors, anything from, basically all sectors, a lot of manufacturing, education like yourselves. I've been a guest lecturer at Westminster. I do, and internationally, so all kinds of countries, and obviously as a coach as well as different sectors. Also do quite a bit of work in construction. So it's pretty wide-ranging and very, very exciting.
It's exciting to have you here today. And let me start then the discussion by asking you this very popular question. What is the difference between a project manager and a project leader?
So I think it's really a term that I have paid a lot of attention to myself. It's not necessarily widely known. It's not necessarily how the organization looks at it, because the role will be a project manager. So most organizations look for a project manager to fulfill a role. So I think the role description is fine. But I distinguish, as a project manager, you can either be leading or you can be managing. And you can be doing both at almost, within the same role. We need both. So let me explain. When we manage, when a project manager is a real manager, it's more about planning, the scheduling, the risk management. It's something that you can say there's a right or a wrong. And It's also something that's more logical, more rational. And often, if I'm a manager, in the old sense of the word, it's something about I direct you, I tell you what to do. Because in the old days, like factory workers, even in modern days, they report to me, I'm their supervisor, so I need to tell them what to do. Of course, today, some of this doesn't really apply anymore because sometimes your team members has more knowledge than you. So leadership, and even especially in light of uncertainty, like you mentioned before, and complexity with COVID, etc., but it happened way before COVID with VUCA. So VUCA stands for something that's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. we need more the leadership side. So what is the leadership side? It's really not so much about what I know. It's not so much about me giving you instructions, although of course I need to set the vision and also sometimes give direction. But it's more about my attitudes and my behaviors. And I would say also, whereas a manager relies more on their cognitive intelligence, leaders rely more on their emotional intelligence, or at least equally as much on their emotional intelligence, because leaders lead through others. So it's not just me telling you what to do. I need to empower my team, coach my team to reach the project objectives. And I need a lot of emotional intelligence in order to motivate them and understand more about them as people. Otherwise, they're never going to follow.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you about EI, or emotional intelligence, in a few minutes. Thank you for this. I think lots of, even in education, in the education of project management, we are trying to focus more on soft skills now. And maybe it's in our logo, by the way, the yin and yang, the technical versus, or the compatibility that we need to have it with the complementary aspects of having technical as well as soft skills. So I think we need both, but maybe your definition is that the manager would know all the technical stuff, but maybe a leader would add to this knowledge the soft skill of how to motivate others and how to deal with others as well. And I think because we are now managing in this virtual world, the manager, as you said, cannot just keep ordering people to do stuff. You need to have more this interaction, more this human interaction, motivation, and better skills at communicating with people to lead in virtual world. But apart from this, I think part of leadership, not apart from it, it's under the umbrella of leadership, is managing and engaging with stakeholders, especially if you have your team as a stakeholder, and you have the sponsor of the project, and you have other people affected or are affecting the project. All of these groups, we call them stakeholders. Engaging them is a must for the project success. But managing stakeholders has always been a challenge, has always been difficult. How would you manage stakeholders as a leader, not as a manager, within this virtual environment?
Well, I think we have to look at what stakeholder engagement or management is, because many of the steps are still the same. Almost all of them are still the same, whether you are face-to-face or whether you are in a virtual world. And I think also many teams were already virtual before and had teams across the world, across different time zones. So what we first do, we identify stakeholders. So identifying stakeholders, you need to do anyway, whether you're virtual or whether that doesn't change. Analyzing stakeholders, looking at their level of power and influence, we still need to do also, that doesn't change. So it's in this engagement piece, as you're talking about, we're now virtual, so we can't just drop by somebody's desk. And I think what's really important when we analyze stakeholders is to look at their personality type, because every stakeholder wants to be engaged differently because they all have different preferences. So somebody who is introverted might actually love, and I know some people, they love working remotely. They love that they don't have to see people and smell other people and whatever. So for those people, it's very easy. Maybe they only want to be engaged through email. To others, that's no. More the outgoing, visionary, creative, bubbly type people. They like to go for a coffee chat, or they like to go into a meeting room and brainstorm on a whiteboard. So for those types of people, perhaps it's a little bit more challenging to engage, but I think we can still do it online. We have whiteboards. Actually, most online collaboration tools now have whiteboards. We can bring our coffee. I was invited recently to a coffee chat, and I thought, I'm sure she means online, which she did, so it's not the same, but we can still make it, we can still try to meet the stakeholders' preferences. So one question I always encourage people to ask stakeholders when it comes to engagement is, how would you like me to communicate with you? If you ask all of your key stakeholders, how would you like me to engage with you, given that we are virtual, they will tell you. They might say, let's schedule a call every so often. Or they might say, let's just do it in in writing, or they might say something different. I don't know. Obviously, the option of going for of meeting in a room is no longer there. So then it comes to the quality of the conversation, and we talked about emotional intelligence, how that's important for leaders. But that's still the same, really. Whether you're online or whether you're in a room together, you still need to ask the same questions. You still need to ask what the stakeholder worries about. You still need to ask what they care about. You still need to ask what success looks like to them. So all of those questions are the same. But I think there is something different when we're in a room. There is more like maybe you can look each other in the eyes differently. So I think we need, maybe when we are online with a stakeholder, we need to maybe work a little bit harder in the beginning to build the trust and to deliberately share some personal information, which comes maybe more natural when we are in a room. So it's the same things we need to do, but I think we need to be more conscious of doing the right things when we're online.
I agree with you. I think this building of trust is what becoming challenging, because naturally and voluntarily you share personal news when you are with people in the same room, but it's different when you are online. I once heard someone saying that he was actually an academic when I was doing my master's degree, and he said, I sent him an email saying I have a question on this module. I was a student back then, and he said to me, come and see me in the university. Okay, I live 10 minutes away, walking distance, but it wasn't a problem for me. But he insisted. And when I came into the office, he said to me, face-to-face is always better. And I was thinking to myself, well, you cost me some time. What if I was hours away? And I kept thinking about it. Is face-to-face always the best way of communicating with people? Well, we have face-to-face now, don't we? It doesn't need to be physical. So the technology allowed for it. But maybe the definition of face-to-face has changed. So do you agree with this terminology? Is face-to-face is always better?
I would again go back to what's the preference of my stakeholder, because if my stakeholder doesn't enjoy being in physical proximity of me, then it's not better, because they're going to feel awkward, or I don't know. But it depends what they believe, what their filters are. Also, I want to say that all the coaching I do now is online.
Yeah.
And probably 10, 15, 20 years ago, it would have been, but no, you need to always meet online, and people are skeptical. But, I have people up big in front of me on my screen. I'm closer to them. If they feel closer than if we were in a room. Yeah. And of course, some of them I have not met them, so I don't know how it would be if I met them. But I cannot see a difference in the, it saves us all more time.
Yeah. So you are saying I don't need to force a team member to be more interactive online. If they are preferring that way of email and written communication, I should just respect that preference of the stakeholder or of the team member.
Yeah, I think it's always a team member. I think is a bit different, because they need to show their face. I think a senior stakeholder who has a lot of power, you kind of go with what their preferences are.
Yeah.
You don't really tell them. I would, when I'm on a group call and some people don't put their camera on, or if I cannot coach if I can't see people. It's not initially. I need to see them. I need to see their facial expressions. So we gain more information when somebody puts their picture on. And I would always say, put your picture on. I think we kind of have to do that. I mean, some people really prefer not to because they're in a messy environment, whatever. But now we can get background, so that's not an excuse, really. No, I think to work effectively, it's better to see each other. Maybe it's not, in the flesh, but at least online we need to put the camera on.
Yeah. I'm glad you referred to the power of the stakeholder. There exist a number of models to analyze stakeholders from different perspectives or using different aspects. One of the very popular ones is the matrix, which looks at the power of the stakeholder, whether they are the sponsors, paying us money to do the project, or a team member just employed, and also the interest of the stakeholder group or the influence they have on the project. So there exist a number of models, and the project manager or the project leader must be able to analyze the different stakeholder groups based on different variables. But reflecting on your recent article in the project journal, there is a journal published by the APM, Association for Project Management, called the Project Journal. The latest issue, you've actually written an article, and it was very inspirational, and you mentioned something called the 3-dimensional cube as a model for stakeholder analysis. So can you tell us more? This is different from the grid, the matrix. Can you tell us more about this cube?
Yeah, so when I wrote my first book, the Project Management Coaching Workbook, about 10 years ago, that was more project management and not so much leadership. And I was putting this 2-dimensional matrix in there.
Yeah.
And when I was researching, I found that most of it was exactly what you're saying. It was power versus interest. But I was struggling with, because I thought what was more interesting was whether a stakeholder was engaged, was bought in, was actively supporting the project or not. So I changed it in the book, and I thought, oh my God, people might criticize me for it. I wasn't as bold back then, but so I changed, and I put some different dimensions on there. I put power versus supportiveness. How supportive are they? And I thought, really, we need three dimensions here. But I thought, but that's not possible. And then I saw somebody else later on mention the 3 dimensions. And actually, the people who I think published it first was Ruth Murray Webster and Peter Simon. And they came up with this official idea. They didn't try to hide it. They made it, they published a whole book on it. And they have these 3 dimensions: the power, so how strong or weak is the stakeholder? Obviously, someone with more power, we need to pay more attention to, because they could derail a complete project. They could cancel a project. Their interests, so are they actively involved? Are they more passive in the project? And then this 3rd dimension that I think is super interesting. This I call it supportiveness. They call it attitude. So are you hostile or are you helpful? I call it, are you supportive, or are you really an ally, or are you an opponent? So there's different words for it, but I find that interesting. Now, if you map it out in a room with somebody, you can only draw 2 dimensions. So the 3rd dimension, if you put Post-it notes on the grid to illustrate the different stakeholders, you can choose a different color. So let's say you have power and interest. Then the 3rd dimension, attitude, you can use a different color Post-it note. So people know what Post-it notes look like. I have tons of them behind me here. So you use obviously a green when it's somebody who is a helpful stakeholder, and you may put an orange or a red if they're not. So that's the way you can get the 3 dimension.
Do you think a project sponsor or investor could be less supportive?
Well, when I train, I always say to people, what happens? So we can all quickly agree that a sponsor needs to be high power. If they're not high power, what happens? They're going to be overruled by somebody else, so that they're not going to be officially the leader. That's not a good idea. And I also ask, what happens if the sponsor is low on supportiveness or low on attitude? Well, the project isn't going to go anywhere, is it? Because they don't want it to happen. So that's really a bad idea. And I don't think any successful project will have a sponsor who is hostile. It just doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't work.
Maybe they are not as flexible as you want them to be sometimes regarding a change. Maybe. I think what you are mentioning about supportiveness also could relate to the number of changes that a sponsor can accept, and the evidence, that the level of evidence they need to see every time in support of these changes, whether they are needed or not. But let me ask you something about the risk of stakeholders. You mentioned something in your article. The riskiest stakeholders are those with strong power. Maybe they are risky because they can cancel the project, but they also have high interest and negative attitude. How come they could have this high power so they are very risky, but also they could have negative attitude. Is this negative attitude in relation to just some way of behaving or reacting to people, or is it about supportiveness?
So let's imagine that we have a project in an organization, could be any project really, and let's say the financial director is high in power, because most FDs are very high power, right? They hold the purse strings in a sense. And this financial director does not support that this particular project goes ahead, because he believes that it's not good value for money. He believes it's way too expensive. So in effect, let's say the MD, the managing director, wanted to go ahead, but the FD, the financial director, really is what we would call, has a negative attitude. He's hostile. He doesn't want it to go ahead. He will do what he can to, well, they will try and influence each other, and maybe they come up with a compromise. It depends really who is most powerful. But that's an example. If we want the project to go ahead, let's say we want to build a new headquarters as a project, and the financial director does not support it because he doesn't believe the business case is there. But the managing director believes that it will generate a whole new load of business and it's the right thing to do. Then for our project, this financial director is a high risk. If we don't manage this relationship, the project could get cancelled. And that's what we really mean. So then we get down to analyzing this financial director, understanding what's important to let's say, to him. And we need to then understand how to engage, how to ask him about his worries, and how to really let him speak, because that's the first step. People need to express themselves, and then see how we can address it. Can we do something else to answer his concerns?
What do you call this style of leadership when you are dealing with a high-risk stakeholder? Transformational, inspirational? How would you label this leadership style?
I'm not sure. I don't tend to label it other than it's influencing, and it's relational.
Okay.
It could be inspiring, I guess. It could be transformational, but that I think maybe they are terms that apply more when you talk about leading the team. But yeah.
Because we always, it's interesting that when we teach leadership, we always try to teach it how to deal with your team members, but it's rarely that we talk how to deal with people who's got more power, who's got the decision to stop the project entirely. So maybe you will need to shift or to switch between different leadership styles, between to be able to deal with different stakeholders. And this is the art, isn't it? This is the art bit of it.
Yeah, and this is where leadership is interesting compared to management, because the traditional world of management, people report to me, so I can tell them what to do. I don't need to be inspirational. I don't need to be nice to them. I can sack them if I don't like them. I mean, that's not how the world largely works anymore here. But that's really what we mean. So whether I'm leading my team, let's say as a project manager, team members don't report into me. Most of the time, I don't have authority over them, and that's actually a good thing, because it means I have to pay more attention to how I lead. I need to treat them properly, and the same goes with stakeholders. I don't have power over stakeholders. Basically, they may be more senior than me, but some of my stakeholders, some of my team members may be more senior than me. I know many junior project managers. It's really hard for them. They feel they need to ask for favors because they're too junior. The team members are subject matter experts with lots of experience, and it's really challenging then to go and hold somebody to account who has 20 years more experience than you. The only thing they can do is influence.
Yeah, it is. I think it's a synonym for leadership, being influential. Susanne, what do you think about this new app project, the contact tracing app? If you are the project leader, well, we can say the project has completed the design phase and it's now into operation. If a user says to you, I don't want to use it, it's breaching my privacy. But if this element, actually, the privacy breaching is what makes the apps worth having. So how would you, as a project leader, discuss users from the perspective of stakeholders, stubborn users like these, or users who've got very strong beliefs about the project?
Well, I think whenever we start a new project, we need to engage the users. And if the users say this is not a product we want to use, then the idea is dead. Because you can develop a very fantastic app or a fantastic application or anything, you know, a system of any kind. But if the users aren't taken into the project and actively engaged, and this happens, this really does happen, then you end up with a product that is perfect technically, but nobody wants to use it. Because, and what I also want to say, in some organizations, it may be mandatory. So I'm developing a new order handling system, and it's mandatory for the users to use it. So I have no choice. Oftentimes, users are forgotten about, and they end up getting a new system that is, let's say, not very user-friendly. But they have to do it. It's part of their job. With a contact tracing app, you can't force people. It's not mandatory. So then you end up with, really, who has the most power in the end? Well, if I don't want to use it, I'm not going to use it. And then you end up with, maybe in 6 months, they're going to run the stats on this. And if, I don't know what their percentages are, but surely they must have done a business case and said, you know, if 10% use it, it's a success. If 20% uses, it's an overwhelming success. If 2% uses, it's a failure. And they would have probably done you would have thought some analysis. Will enough people use this? Enough people are scared. So enough people are probably they don't care about the data. They want to download it, right? And then you have other people who are more skeptical. So it depends on the numbers, but it comes down to the business case. And was it worthwhile?
Yeah, but later, of course, when you are managing your stakeholders, you need to manage them and engage with them and respond to them in a way that protects that business case that you started with, right? So if it said 20% or 10% of the population would use it to make this a success, then you need to keep this 10% a number, not going lower, maybe by campaigns or marketing of the app or ensuring the users that it's not breaching that much. Maybe we mentioned that it will be anonymous, so they will not send the user's name to the NHS or government or whatever. So do you think you would still need to do this job of continuously monitoring to make sure this figure in the business case is still valid?
Yeah, I mean, when we stakeholder, under the umbrella of stakeholder management is stakeholder communication, of course. And really, once we've analyzed all of the stakeholders, we need to understand what each of their communication needs are. Some stakeholders are so important, they're part of the steering committee, they can make changes, they actively. Others are just users, and I'm going to say just users because they often don't have a lot of formal power. So, but we need to communicate with them. You know, so hopefully we do some workshops where we gain their input, but otherwise, certainly we need to inform them of what is going on. And that is part of any project. We need to have a regular communication. Now, there is a difference between influencing and manipulating. Influencing,
talk about this. Yeah.
Influencing means that I influence you to do something that's in your best interest. Whereas manipulation means that I influence you or manipulate you to do something that is in my best interest, not in your interest. And so when it comes to campaigns and, persuading somebody, persuasion is another word, persuading somebody that something is good for them, it also is about selling. Maybe I want to sell you something that's in my interest, but it's not in your interest. So I think ethically, we have to be careful how much we try to sell something to somebody. Of course, we need to inform. Yeah, we need to inform about what the benefits are, but we should also allow the users to express their concerns.
That's a brilliant answer. Thank you very much. You brought ethics into the answer, and this is a very important topic as well, especially when you are a good leader trying to influence, as you said, as opposed to manipulating your stakeholders. So, on a more generic term, you said something very interesting again previously, maybe in your book or in that article. Don't stick your head in the sand is a powerful message. What does it mean to project leaders? Don't stick your head in the sand.
Well, I think that's what an ostrich does, right? When an ostrich gets scared, at least that's what we see cartoons. I've never personally seen an ostrich do that, but they stick their head down, and so what it means is that I'm closing my eyes, right? I don't see it. I use a phrase often, which is when it comes to stakeholders, especially those stakeholders who have a lot of power and who have a negative attitude, for instance, what we mentioned before, right? The financial director. We need to walk into the lion's den and address it. We can't just stick our head in the sand. We can't just ignore things. Sweep it under the carpet. Not many people like conflict. If you're a junior project manager, you're going to have a conversation with the financial director. I mean, first of all, you might ask sponsor for some help here in managing that relationship. But essentially, we need to be able to have challenging conversations.
Yeah.
And the sooner we get used to it, the better, because life is about having uncomfortable and challenging conversations.
Yeah, we tend to avoid difficult situations, don't we? Even on a personal level. But I think this is a very important skills for leaders as opposed to managers, to try to solve the problems, not leave the problems accumulating, try to solve them when they occur or when they happen, to resolve issues, if you want to call them in project management terminologies. I agree with you completely on this, Susanne. Now, we have students starting their studies. They've already started. This is the first week, actually, in universities, and they are studying online under the online delivery mode. We have also employees, entrepreneurs, and managers navigating through this new normal of remote and virtual environment. So can you list 3 essential skills, just 3, the top 3 for you, if you want to succeed as a leader? Perhaps you are a student leading your assignment, using group assignment into submitting on time successfully. Maybe you are an employee, maybe you are a project manager leading virtually. So what are these top 3 skills that we need to have?
Oh, I think there are many. So I'll just try what comes to me. And I would say to, first of all, referring back to the emotional intelligence, to be able to empathize with somebody, because some people are in a difficult situation at home. They have a small flat, they have children at home, maybe they don't even have a desk or whatever. And for those people, it's really challenging to sit at home so much. So as a leader, we need to empathize, we need to listen. If you try to speak logic to somebody who is in an emotionally challenging state, they're not going to listen, they're not going to hear you, because they are just a little bit panicky. So first, as a leader, we need to enable people to speak their truth and just to listen empathetically. And then I think when they've got that off their chest, it's about helping them to see the opportunities. And that's both in any situation, not just online, but it could be an issue I'm having, could be a technical block, even see the opportunities. And what if you go back to online learning and working remotely? There are so many opportunities. I mean, I design a lot of training workshops, and sometimes it could even be that we can do things online that we can't do in a room, such as doing individual breakout rooms, and which is very confidential, for instance. So see the opportunities, and I think it's part of that leader's role to show hope. This is not going to go on forever. There are things we can learn from it. So that's really a big part of it. And I must say also, right now, with people working remotely, make sure that your team takes breaks. I mean, I can see people around me in my neighborhood, well, my neighbors working from home. And one person in particular I can see, just because you can see things in London. I'm not trying to stare, but, we're so close, aren't we? And this person is online from 8 o'clock in the morning till 11 at night. And it pains me to see that. Every time I go to my kitchen, I can see that kitchen. I can see these 2 big screens. And I'm like, my God, I'm going to go to bed now. I don't know when you're going to go to bed. It's just so sad. I don't know. It's unbelievable. And I think it's many people work harder when they sit at home because they don't have to get up and go home. And some people feel guilty. They feel they need to work harder. So we need to make sure that our team members take breaks and that they go for a quick walk at lunchtime, get away from the screen. I think they're really some tips that I would give.
Thank you very much. You might, there's a higher probability you will be losing this balance, life and work balance, if you are working from home, because these boundaries start to disappear. Thank you for this, Susanne. The last bit I would like to mention is that your book, The Power of Project Leadership, the second edition is out, I think, for when was it out, the second edition?
Last autumn.
Last autumn, okay. And the Book Club, an initiative led by Dr. Nick Lambro at the University of Westminster and Himanshu Jain from PMI, your book will be read in November, and you will attend one of the sessions as well after you read to discuss this book. Can you tell us a little bit about this book, The Power of Leadership, the second edition?
Yeah, so basically we started this conversation talking about the differences between being a manager and a leader in the project space. And this book really focuses on the leadership aspect. So it focuses, there are 7 keys in there, 7 keys to transforming from a manager to a leader. And again, I want to emphasize, we're not saying management is bad, but we need to add a whole load of leadership in there. So the 7 keys, it's about being authentic, leading with vision, improving and innovating, leading the stakeholders, leading the team, and it's about using powerful techniques. So the techniques is more a management piece, but we still need it in there. And then it's about working with focus and intent and a little bit more of the personal energy side. How do you bring yourself to the table? So it's really, the idea has been to provide a comprehensive view of everything that a project leader does. And it did get the PMI's prize last year at the event in London. I don't even know if it's the book of the year. It was the Project Management Prize for the best book. So that's obviously a great honor.
Thank you very much.
Westminster were there. Westminster was there.
Yes. Can you see the book again? The cover. That's The Power of Leadership. This is the second edition. It's available, I think, in the library for the students of the University of Westminster. Thank you for this, Susanne. And that was all for us on the discussion, but now we will open it to audience to ask questions. I already have some comments and questions, so I can start showing some of them. Nadia and Suad, okay, let's show this one. Maybe we've already covered some of that. What are the challenges of online or virtual project leader? Can you be an effective virtual project leader? Can you be an effective virtual project leader? What is your answer to this in short?
Yes, absolutely. It's not the things we do are the same, but when we work virtually, we need to just. I think we are forced to be a bit more structured. So please stop me if I go on for too long an answer. But I think one of the things that we don't tend to do that we should do is to talk about the ground rules. How we're going to work together. What behaviors do we expect from each other? When we're in a room, we just think, oh, we know that sort of stuff, but we don't. When we're online, sometimes we have to be explicit. Which meetings are we going to have? How are we going to deal with pop-up messages and instant messaging? So I think when we're online, a good thing is that it forces us to be more structured about our interactions.
That's a good point. I think this relates to what Suad is saying about, I think we've also covered this with the top 3 skills. What are the key lessons of leadership post-COVID-19? Being optimistic here that we've already are post-COVID-19. Will it be a new era of leadership?
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, for me, yes. As I said, it was already beginning with people talking a lot about VUCA. We have volatility, we have uncertainty, ambiguity, and complexity. And why do we have this going on? This was already before COVID, but COVID has made it explode because the world is interconnected. Listen, if this virus had broken out in one part of the world, decades ago, it wouldn't have been a big deal because we're not as interconnected as now. So the world is more interconnected. We have more global competition. We have stakeholders who sit globally. We didn't even talk about that. Different time zones, different cultures. And all of that, plus technological change that is unprecedented, all of this means that VUCA is here. Now, as I said, COVID has made it even more explosive. So we need a new kind of leadership because we need to empower the team. We can no longer just have a plan that we follow with the old-fashioned management methods.
Thank you. I think this is a strong message to everyone. That's the old classic way of just being the boss would not work anymore. I have few comments also from students, and I find this one very interesting. This is Juanita. She's talking about the distinction between the science of project management and the art of project management, which is seen in leadership that you've already mentioned. And I have also something from So add again continuous support. When we talked about the level of support that stakeholder group or party may have, this support may depend on their interest in the actual project. They may sponsor it for several reasons, but then charity leads to other more important projects because in this case, but can't engage, etc. So I think we've covered, because that was earlier when we were talking about stakeholders, we've covered most of the aspects of how you engage with different stakeholders. We have different comments on leadership. Thanking you. Good point about leadership, Susanne. Thank you. And we were in the PMI Awards. So yes, the University of Westminster, they are congratulating you. Congratulations on the award. And I think one of the most pressing questions right now is, should we as project leaders keep on praying and hoping that we go back to normal, having this in the background, or should we just forget about it and deal with the current situation? I heard one student saying, adapting doesn't mean liking. Would you be able to comment on this?
Well, I am naturally an optimistic person. And what I hope is that we will get the best of both worlds. So it means that, and actually this was part of what you said early on, the difference between distance learning and online learning. I hadn't thought of that, the difference before. But I think you said that online learning is, well, you do blended learning. So you take the best of both worlds. You do what is appropriate in any given situation. And that's what I hope that that post-COVID is what we're getting. I'll give you an example from my own life. I have been traveling extortionately, like almost every week previously, to run trainings, to speak in different locations. And some of it was actually quite unnecessary, but my clients wanted me to go in person. Now we're doing it online, and it's such a relief, and it saves a lot of fuel, it saves a lot of time and money, So I think that from now on, we will have a real choice. Does this need to be online? Does this need to be face-to-face? We'll do what makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a good advice. We are approaching the end of the session, Susanne, and just to reiterate, you mentioned empathy, you mentioned see the opportunities, and also take a break. These are the three things that we should keep in mind. Any concluding remarks, any phrase that should keep remembering about how to become a better leaders?
I just want to thank people who are listening and watching back afterwards or listening to it, and put your own style as a leader. There's no right or wrong. Just the only real advice is study human psychology, because it's people who deliver projects, it's not processes.
Yeah, on a human level. Know each other on a human level. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susanne. And it was a delight having you. And I hope everybody who is listening or watching benefited from this. And I look forward to read your book and also to have you at some point again in the future. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. So to all our audience, thank you for watching and for listening. Our upcoming session actually is on the 29th of October. And we will be talking in the same line of navigating the unknown. It will be about the future of the project management profession. And we've already have confirmed distinguished guests, David Thompson, who contributed to the APM latest report on the future of project management, and Rob Leslie Carter, the director at Arup. We will have a discussion and a little debate on the future of us as project managers, career-wise, and the future of project management as a knowledge domain. So same way we've seen you here today, we hope to see you then on the 29th of October. Please subscribe to the channel to receive our notifications. Until we are live again, stay safe and stay healthy. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.